Jake Carter adjusted the awkwardly tight collar of his diplomatic uniform as he stepped off the shimmering platform of the teleportation hub on Xylaris Prime. The planet was dazzling, luminescent plants pulsed with light, and floating orbs of energy danced in the air, their movements mimicking curious glances. Jake couldn't help but mutter, "Looks like someone spilled a rave all over a botanical garden." A nearby Xylarian guide, with translucent skin shifting between shades of teal and gold, turned toward him, its face unreadable but its telepathic voice chiming in Jake's head. Asterisk, is that a compliment? Asterisk. Jake grinned, a little too widely. Of course. Very illuminating place you've got here. The guide nodded slowly, the meaning lost but the intent apparently polite enough to pass. Jake made his way to the grand hall where the ambassador, Zira, awaited him. She was stunning in a way that was hard to pin down, her form shimmered faintly, as though she was more suggestion than substance. Jake, ever the charmer, extended a hand. Jake Carter, Earth's first official diplomat to Xylaris. I'm here to make friends and not screw up. Zira tilted her head, her voice a cool hum in his mind. Asterisk, fascinating. Humans prefer to state their fears as intentions. Asterisk. Ha, yeah, well, you'll find we're good at both, Jake replied, scratching the back of his neck. Dinner was a diplomatic affair, the kind Jake was trained for but rarely excelled at. As courses arrived, each more gelatinous and glowing than the last, he leaned into humor to navigate the strange etiquette. So, what exactly is this? He asked, poking at a quivering dish. Zira's expression softened, her voice laced with amusement. Asterisk, a delicacy, meant to inspire vitality. Among my people, it symbolizes unity. Asterisk. Unity, huh? Well, I've always been a team player, Jake quipped, downing the dish in one swift gulp. The room erupted in murmurs, the Xylarians clearly impressed, or horrified. He couldn't tell which. By the end of the meal, Zira was visibly intrigued. As they shared a ceremonial toast, she leaned closer. Asterisk, few would embrace our traditions so boldly. You are unique. Asterisk. Jake chuckled nervously. Unique is the nice way of saying doesn't read the manual, isn't it? The next morning, Jake found himself on a guided tour of Xylarian cultural landmarks. His guide introduced him to another diplomat, Lvania. She was younger, her form sharper and her presence more dynamic. Unaware of her connection to Zira, Jake extended his hand again, only to be met with a warm telepathic laugh. Asterisk, the human habit of physical contact. Fascinating. Asterisk. It's a greeting, Jake explained. And sometimes, if you're lucky, an invitation to lunch. Lvania's voice chimed in his head, amusement evident. Asterisk, you're bold. Humans are bolder than I expected. Asterisk. As they walked, Jake made more attempts at humor, most of which landed awkwardly but earnestly. When they passed a sculpture of twisting, interwoven shapes, he said, looks like an alien dating app profile picture. Lvania paused, her amusement palpable. Asterisk, this depicts the unity of two beings creating life. Is this how humans think of connection? Asterisk. Jake flushed. Well, not all humans. Just the ones with a sense of humor. They laughed, their conversation flowing easily despite Jake's occasional missteps. Over the course of the day, Jake found himself enjoying Lvania's company, her curiosity about humans as engaging as his curiosity about Xylaris. That evening, at a grand cultural exchange ceremony, Jake participated in a Xylarian tradition without fully understanding its implications. He stood in the center of an energy ring, his body tingling as he held orbs of light in both hands. What's this one for? He asked, glancing at Lvania on his left and Zira on his right. It is a gesture of connection, Zira explained, her voice soothing. And of new beginnings, Lvania added, her tone brighter. Jake smiled. Well, here's to unity and beginnings, I guess. As the ritual concluded, the energy dissipated, leaving Jake feeling oddly lightheaded. He was congratulated profusely by the Xylarians, though he wasn't quite sure why. he returned to his quarters that night, satisfied with his progress. Not bad for day one, he muttered, sinking into his bed. Unbeknownst to Jake, his actions had set off a chain of events that no diplomatic training could have prepared him for. The next morning, Jake woke to a soft chime and the sight of two Xylarians standing at the foot of his bed. Their translucent forms shimmered with hues of green and silver, their expressions unreadable. He blinked, groggy and confused. Can I help you?" he asked, sitting up awkwardly. One of them stepped forward, speaking directly into his mind. Ambassador Zira and Delegate Lavanya request your immediate presence in the Hall of Unity. There is an important matter to address. Jake rubbed his face, still shaking off sleep. Great, diplomacy before coffee. My favorite. By the time he arrived, the hall was buzzing with activity. Dozens of Xylarian officials stood in clusters, their iridescent forms reflecting the room's ethereal glow. At the center stood Zira and Lavanya, their faces unusually serious. Jake approached cautiously, offering a sheepish smile. "Morning. What's all the fuss?" Zira turned to him, her telepathic voice calm but firm. There is a development, Jake Carter. One we did not foresee. Lavanya's tone was sharper, tinged with disbelief. Your actions last night have consequences. Jake frowned. What are you talking about? I just held some glowing orbs and said a few nice words. How bad could it be? The room fell silent as a Xylarian medic stepped forward, holding a device that projected glowing symbols into the air. The medic's voice entered Jake's mind, calm yet authoritative. Both Ambassador Zira and Delegate Lavanya are with child. Their offspring carry your genetic signature. Jake's jaw dropped. I'm sorry, what now? The medic repeated, you are the genetic contributor to both pregnancies. This is unprecedented in Xylarian history. Jake stared at the medic, then at Zira, then at Lavanya. No. No way. That's not even possible. I didn't, how does this even work? Zira's voice remained steady. The ritual we performed is deeply symbolic, but it also carries a biological function. By participating, you shared a fragment of your essence with us. Jake threw up his hands. Why didn't anyone tell me that? I thought it was just, a cultural thing. Like a toast. Lavanya crossed her arms, her tone brimming with sarcasm. Humans really don't read the fine print, do they? The hall erupted into murmurs, with Xylarian officials debating the implications. Jake, meanwhile, felt like the floor had been yanked out from under him. So, let me get this straight, he said, rubbing his temples. I'm somehow the father of two alien kids, one from you, he gestured at Zira, and one from you, he pointed at Lavanya, and you're both okay with this? Zira's expression softened, her voice gentle. We are not opposed, but the situation is complex. Lavanya, less patient, snapped, it's more than complex. It's a scandal. Jake groaned. Great. I'm not just a diplomat, I'm an intergalactic tabloid headline. As the council deliberated, Jake found himself bombarded with questions. Xylarian scientists wanted to study his DNA, curious about the adaptability of human biology. Diplomats from other planets whispered about the implications for interspecies relations. And through it all, Zira and Lavanya bickered over how to handle the situation. This is not a matter for public debate, Zira said firmly, her tone directed at Lavanya. And yet here we are, Lavanya shot back. Perhaps you should have considered that before inviting him to your chambers. Jake held up his hands. Whoa, hold on. Let's not make this sound worse than it already is. The council finally called for order, with the head delegate addressing Jake directly. Human, your actions have caused significant disruption. You must explain yourself. Jake stepped forward, sweating under the weight of dozens of glowing eyes. Look, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I came here to build bridges, not family trees. Can we maybe focus on fixing this instead of blaming me for not knowing your rituals come with hidden features? His words, while clumsy, seemed to strike a chord. The murmurs quieted, and Zira spoke. There is truth in his words. He is unfamiliar with our ways. We cannot fault him entirely. Lavanya sighed but nodded. Fine. But what do we do now? Jake, sensing an opening, tried to lighten the mood. Maybe we start with some ground rules? Like, no more surprise pregnancies. Zira and Lavanya both shot him a look, and he quickly added, kidding. Sort of. The council adjourned for the day, leaving Jake alone with Zira and Lavanya. The tension between them was palpable. I'm sorry, Jake said finally. I really didn't mean for any of this to happen. Zira sighed, her tone softer now. Intentions matter little when outcomes are irreversible. What matters is how we move forward. Lavanya nodded reluctantly. Agreed. But don't think you're off the hook, human. You're involved now, whether you like it or not. Jake managed a weak smile. Well, that's reassuring. As they left the hall, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just gotten a lot more complicated. And this time, there was no going back. Jake sat in his quarters, head in his hands, trying to process the whirlwind of events. He was a diplomat, not some intergalactic Casanova, yet here he was, caught in a surreal soap opera involving two alien women, mother and daughter, no less, both carrying his child. The silence was broken by a soft chime. The door slid open to reveal Zira, her usual calm demeanor replaced by an air of quiet tension. We need to talk, she said, her telepathic voice more pointed than usual. Jake gestured for her to sit, though she chose to remain standing, her shimmering form shifting subtly. This situation is unprecedented, she began. But it is not unsolvable. I have consulted with the council, and they agree we must find a way to navigate this without jeopardizing diplomatic relations. Jake raised an eyebrow. So, what's the plan? Do I sign some kind of intergalactic paternity agreement? Zira's lips curved into what could only be described as an alien smirk. Humans and their humor. It is both frustrating and endearing. Before Jake could respond, the door chimed again. This time, Lavanya entered, her energy crackling with annoyance. Of course you'd come here first, she snapped at her mother, her voice sharp in Jake's mind. Trying to stake your claim, as always. Jake stood, hands raised in mock surrender. Whoa, let's not turn this into a space soap opera. I'm already overwhelmed enough without a family feud. Lavanya shot him a glare but turned her attention back to Zira. We need to address the bigger issue. The council is split on how to handle this. Some see it as an opportunity to deepen ties with humanity. Others view it as an embarrassment. Jake groaned. Great. I'm not just a diplomat, I'm a diplomatic incident. Zira sighed. Regardless of the council's opinions, we must focus on the practicalities. This is not just about politics, it is about the lives we are creating. Jake felt a pang of responsibility. He had always been good at talking his way out of trouble, but this was different. He couldn't charm his way out of fatherhood, especially not when it involved two Xylarians with vastly different temperaments. So, what do you need from me? He asked, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Zira's gaze softened. Your presence. Your commitment. Our people value unity, and your involvement will demonstrate that this is not a mistake but a bridge between our species. Lavanya crossed her arms. And no more jokes. You're not helping your case with your peculiar sense of humor. Jake sighed. Noted. I'll keep the dad jokes to a minimum. Or is it too soon to call them that? Lavanya groaned, but Zira chuckled, a sound like a soft ripple in the air. Perhaps there is hope for you yet, Jake Carter. The tension eased slightly, but Jake knew this was only the beginning. As the two Xylarians left, he couldn't help but mutter to himself, "I came here to build bridges. Guess I'm stuck building cribs, too." The next day, Jake was summoned to a council meeting, where the air was thick with anticipation. He was asked to address the room, his every word carrying the weight of interstellar relations. "Look," he began, his tone earnest, "I'm just a guy from Earth trying to do my job. I didn't come here expecting to expand my family. But I care about doing the right thing, for all of us." The council murmured in approval, though a few skeptical glances lingered. Jake pressed on. "This might be an unconventional situation, but maybe that's what makes it worth figuring out. Humans are good at adapting, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this work. For Zira, for Lvania, and for the little ones on the way." A ripple of telepathic communication filled the room, and Jake braced himself for their verdict. After what felt like an eternity, the head delegate spoke. "Asterisk, your words carry weight, human. We will support your efforts to forge a new path forward. But remember, this is a shared responsibility." Asterisk. Jake nodded. "I wouldn't have it any other way." As he left the chamber, he couldn't help but feel a strange mix of pride and dread. He had managed to keep humanity's reputation intact, for now. But the real challenge was just beginning. The following weeks were a blur of meetings, preparations, and more awkward conversations than Jake thought possible. The council had decreed that he would take on a participatory role in the pregnancies, a term that seemed deliberately vague. Jake had no idea what being a participatory father to alien children even entailed, but he was determined to figure it out, mainly because every other species in the Interstellar Union was watching. Zira approached the situation with her usual calm, taking the lead on educating Jake about Xylarian customs. "Our people place great importance on the prenatal connection," she explained one day. "You must be present during the bonding rituals." Jake squinted at her. "Bonding rituals? That sounds ominous. Do I need to hold another glowing orb?" Zira's lips twitched in what Jake now recognized as amusement. "No orbs this time. It is a meditative practice, meant to harmonize the energies of the parents." Jake shrugged. "Meditation, I can do. As long as I don't accidentally end up harmonizing with someone else's energy, too." Lvania, who had been quietly observing, rolled her eyes. "You're taking this remarkably lightly for someone who just became the subject of intergalactic gossip." Jake sighed. "If I don't laugh about it, I'll cry. And nobody wants to see that." The first bonding session was surprisingly serene. Jake sat cross-legged between Zira and Lvania, their forms glowing faintly as they guided him through the process. He couldn't help but marvel at how different, and yet oddly familiar, it felt. "So, this is parenthood," he muttered. "Glowing lights and awkward breathing exercises. Feels about right." The tranquility didn't last long. Back in his quarters, Jake was bombarded with messages from various alien species, each offering unsolicited advice. The Brellians suggested he consume a diet of fermented algae to strengthen his paternal energy. The Tkral sent a crate of crystals meant to balance his reproductive aura. And a particularly enthusiastic message from a Glurnian ambassador proposed a naming ceremony involving synchronized howling. Jake stared at the messages, muttering, "This is what I get for being the first human in this mess. I'm a pioneer, all right, a pioneer in intergalactic overparenting." Zira and Lvania, for their part, handled the attention with far more grace. Zira's diplomatic experience made her adept at deflecting intrusive questions, while Lvania's sharp wit kept overly curious reporters at bay. Still, the tension between them remained palpable, and Jake often found himself playing the reluctant peacemaker. One evening, after a particularly heated argument over nursery arrangements, apparently, Xylarian infants thrived in environments with specific color spectrums, Jake decided he'd had enough. "All right, listen up," he said, cutting through their bickering. "I get that this is weird for all of us, but we're in this together. Zira, you want everything perfect because you've done this before. Lvania, you're trying to make your own mark. I get it. But can we maybe focus on what's best for the kids instead of turning this into a competition? The room fell silent. Zira and Lavanya exchanged glances, their tension easing slightly. You're right, Zira admitted. This is uncharted territory for all of us. Lavanya nodded, albeit grudgingly. Fine. But I'm still not compromising on the nursery color. Jake smirked. Baby steps. Literally. As the days turned into weeks, Jake began to settle into his new role. He attended every bonding session, learned more about Xylarian culture than he ever thought possible, and even managed to avoid most of the more ridiculous parenting advice from other species. He also discovered that Xylarians had a surprisingly human sense of humor, albeit one that leaned heavily on wordplay. During one bonding session, Lavanya made a sly comment about Jake's impressive genetic contribution, causing Zira to laugh for the first time in weeks. See? Jake said with a grin. Humor brings people together. Even if it's at my expense. By the time the pregnancies reached their final stages, the three of them had developed a tentative but genuine camaraderie. They still argued, mostly about minor cultural differences and Jake's tendency to crack jokes at inappropriate times, but there was an underlying sense of mutual respect. The day of the birth arrived sooner than Jake expected. Xylarian births were a communal affair, with family, friends, and even council members present to witness the arrival of new life. Jake was nervous, more nervous than he'd ever been in his life, but Zira and Lavanya reassured him with their calm presence. When the moment finally came, Jake stood between them, holding their hands as two tiny, shimmering forms entered the world. The room erupted in cheers, but Jake barely noticed. All he could see were the two tiny beings in front of him, half human, half Xylarian, and completely miraculous. Well, he said, his voice thick with emotion, guess I'm a dad now. Twice over. Zira smiled, her expression warm. Welcome to the family, Jake Carter. Lavanya smirked. Try not to screw it up. Jake chuckled, though tears brimmed in his eyes. For the first time since this wild journey began, he felt like he belonged, not just as a diplomat, but as a part of something bigger. As he cradled the two tiny beings in his arms, he couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, humanity really did have a place among the stars. And it started right here, with this unlikely, intergalactic family.